Before the 19th century, the British countryside was defined by a specific kind of isolation. In the Scottish Highlands, traveling across the moors meant moving on foot or by horse. The landscape was governed entirely by natural rhythms and the slow pace of human travel. The arrival of the railway was a sudden, violent shift. It brought thousands of tons of iron, fire, and kinetic energy into the quietest corners of the country. This was a massive physical intrusion, tearing through the landscape with a force the land had never experienced. Traditional ghost stories usually center on figures from the distant past, Victorian widows or medieval kings, but railway hauntings often involve something far more mechanical. These reports suggest that we are dealing with a phenomenon rooted in paranormal science rather than individual spirits. Researchers propose that the sheer scale of the industrial age acted as a traumatic event for the environment itself. The movement of these massive machines created such a high concentration of energy that it may have permanently scarred the landscape and left artifacts within the local timeline. To understand these events, we have to look at three distinct types of temporal anomalies: ripples projected from the future, repetitive loops of the past, and collective storms of trapped energy. This timeline vector graph illustrates an acoustic shadow. An event carries so much energetic weight, its presence is felt before it physically occurs. The witness catches a sensory glimpse of future technology slipping into their present moment. Near Tay Bridge in the Scottish Highlands, two men reported a massive mechanical phantom train roaring across the open moors. The sighting was impossible at the time. There were no tracks, no stations, and no engines anywhere in the region. A similar auditory event occurred at Whitland Abbey in Wales. Long before the Great Western Railway reached this valley, a witness was suddenly surrounded by the deafening noise of 1,000 metal wheels and the blast of a steam whistle in a completely silent landscape. In both the Highlands and at Whitland Abbey, physical railway lines were eventually built along the exact paths where these phantoms were first witnessed. The physical infrastructure arrived years after its own shadow had already passed through the land. These events suggest the arrival of the railway was such a monumental alteration to the landscape that it projected its presence backward through time, leaving an acoustic footprint before the first spike was ever driven into the ground. This vector graphic maps the residual loop theory. The physical environment acts as a recording medium, absorbing kinetic and emotional energy. These mindless recordings are stored in the stone, triggered to play back by specific atmospheric conditions. The glowing ghost train of Dunfale is a phantom of habit. Long after the tracks were removed, witnesses continued to see an empty train moving through the night with its internal carriage lights on. It is a mechanical routine replaying itself without any associated tragedy. We can compare these habits to crisis manifestations, such as the woman seen running through the Auchendinny tunnel. Trapped in the cold stone, her spirit replays a moment of extreme distress, vanishing before she reaches the exit, a loop of human trauma recorded by the tunnel itself. These residual loops show that both decades of constant mechanical movement and split seconds of profound despair leave an identical, permanent imprint on the physical world. In some locations, the sheer density of history and movement creates a collective residual haunting. This occurs when thousands of lives and overlapping traumas are compressed into a single confined space. The deep tunnels of the Glasgow Underground act as a primary repository for this kind of industrial trauma. These stone passages have spent over a century absorbing the noise and energy of the city's subterranean life. Workers between the Shields Road and West Street stations reported encountering a clattering cloud, a surge of chaotic energy accompanied by a deafening roar. Within the swirling mist, witnesses saw the distorted, agonized faces of the dead, a literal storm of history playing back all at once. While tunnels trap energy through compression, a singular tragedy can create a different kind of atmospheric scar across a wide landscape. During a violent storm in 1879, the Tay Bridge collapsed. The engine and 75 passengers plunged into the freezing waters of the Firth. This disaster created a fixed anniversary manifestation. Every year on December 28th, a glowing train appears on the bridge, heading toward the site of the collapse. It is a luminous memorial, repeating the final moments of that journey on the exact date of the tragedy. These collective hauntings show that mass tragedy leaves behind more than memories. It creates permanent energetic storms and glowing echoes anchored to exact physical coordinates. Many of the physical tracks from the Industrial Revolution have been dismantled or reclaimed by nature. However, the energy deposited by a century of steam and iron persists in the landscape. The haunting entity across these stories is the raw, aggressive spirit of the industrial age. It is a ghost of fire and iron, a permanent energetic imprint of a technology that transformed the world and refuses to be quiet. These phenomena suggest that time is not a simple straight line. Monumental historical shifts cast permanent shadows into both the past and the future, leaving the noise of the industrial age to echo forever in the quietest places on Earth.